Sir, this isn't a public museum. These aircraft cost more than most houses. Security will escort you out unless you have legitimate business here. Brad Whitman's voice echoed through the pristine showroom of elite aviation sales, where million-dollar jets gleamed under crystal chandeliers. He stepped between the black man in weathered work clothes and the $4.2 million Cessna citation, his expression mixing disdain with practiced authority. Ezekiel Thompson looked up from examining the aircraft's avionics display, his calloused hands resting calmly at his sides. Behind him, mud from his boots had left traces on the polished marble floor, evidence that somehow justified Brad's immediate assumptions. "I'm interested in purchasing an aircraft for business operations," Zeke said quietly, his voice carrying the patience of someone accustomed to being underestimated. Brad's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Right. And I'm sure you have the $3 million cash just sitting around." The showroom fell silent. Phones emerged from expensive purses. Have you ever been treated like you don't belong around expensive things simply because of how you look? The digital clock above the reception desk showed 4:15 p.m. A brass plaque near the entrance announced, "Elite Aviation Sales, showroom closes 6 o'clock p.m., weekend sales consultations by appointment only." Maya Rodriguez, a young sales associate, had been live streaming a tour of their newest arrivals for the dealership's Instagram when the confrontation began. Her phone captured every word as she tried to maintain professional composure while witnessing obvious discrimination. "These aircraft require serious financial qualification before we allow close inspection," Brad continued, positioning himself between Zeke and the gleaming citation. "We've had issues with people taking photos for insurance scams or pretending to be buyers." Sales Director Kelly Carter emerged from her glass office, drawn by the commotion. Her 15 years in luxury sales had taught her to read situations quickly, but she was already primed by Brad's characterization of the situation. "Is there a problem here?" Kelly asked, her tone professionally neutral, but her body language clearly aligned with Brad's assessment. "This gentleman is asking to examine our premium aircraft without proper qualification procedures," Brad explained, gesturing dismissively toward Zeke. "I was explaining our viewing protocols." Zeke pulled out his wallet, retrieving his driver's license and a business credit card. "I'm willing to provide identification and demonstrate purchasing capability." Brad barely glanced at the documents. "Sir, anyone can get business cards printed these days. We need verified financial statements, bank letters, credit applications completed before we allow access to multi-million-dollar aircraft." The requirements sounded official, but Maya had watched wealthy customers browse freely for hours without any paperwork. A well-dressed white couple near the King Air turboprop was examining the cockpit displays without any qualification procedures. "The procedures seem to vary," Zeke observed calmly, nodding toward the other customers who were freely touching controls and opening compartments. "Those are established clients," Kelly interjected quickly. "We have different protocols for existing relationships versus walk-in inquiries." Maya's live stream viewer count was climbing. 287 viewers, then 543. Comments began appearing as her followers recognized the discriminatory treatment. "This is horrible. Let the man look at planes. Where is this happening?" A wealthy retired couple approached from the Gulfstream display area, the husband wearing a Rolex worth more than most cars. They'd been watching the interaction with growing discomfort. "Excuse me," the woman said to Kelly, "but we've been browsing for an hour without any paperwork. Perhaps you could extend the same courtesy to this gentleman?" Brad's face flushed with irritation. "Ma'am, we appreciate your concern, but we have established security protocols for expensive inventory protection." "Security protocols?" Zeke repeated quietly. "Against potential customers?" "Against people who clearly can't afford our aircraft wasting our time," Brad replied, his filter disappearing under pressure. "Look, this isn't a car lot. These machines cost serious money. Real money." The casual cruelty of the statement hit the showroom like a physical force. Maya's phone captured Brad's dismissive gesture, his refusal to even consider that someone in work clothes might legitimately afford luxury aircraft. Zeke's phone buzzed insistently. FAA Agricultural Aviation Board meeting, 5:30 p.m. Another notification showed, Fleet Maintenance Coordinator, King Air scheduled for inspection tomorrow. He silenced the device without looking, maintaining focus on the immediate situation. I understand aviation costs, Zeke said, his professional composure intact despite mounting humiliation. I'm familiar with aircraft operations, maintenance requirements, and purchasing procedures. Sure you are, Brad scoffed. Let me guess, you're a pilot too? The question was loaded with sarcasm, but Zeke simply nodded. ATP rated, 8,400 flight hours. Kelly laughed outright. Right. And I suppose you have your own hangar too? Maya's live stream hit 200 viewers. Aviation enthusiasts were joining the stream, recognizing the technical knowledge Zeke was displaying despite the staff's dismissive treatment. Comments flooded in from pilots who understood aircraft specifications. A young professional in an expensive suit approached the group, clearly frustrated by what he was witnessing. This is ridiculous. The man knows what he's talking about. I've been listening to his questions about avionics and engine specifications. Sir, please don't interfere with our customer service procedures, Brad warned. We have protocols for a reason. Your protocols seem pretty selective, the man replied, pulling out his phone to record. I watched him ask technical questions that most pilots couldn't answer. The showroom was dividing into camps. Some customers supported the staff's vigilance, while others recognized obvious discrimination. Maya's stream captured every exchange, every dismissive comment, every moment of institutional bias playing out in real time. Timestamp, 75 minutes to closing, Maya whispered to her phone, providing context for her growing audience. This has been going on for 20 minutes now. An older gentleman wearing aviator sunglasses and a flight jacket approached from the turboprop section. Son, I couldn't help overhearing your conversation about King Air specifications. You seem to know those aircraft pretty well. I've flown them extensively, Zeke replied. Reliable aircraft for agricultural operations. Agricultural operations? Brad interrupted with theatrical surprise. Oh, so now you're a crop duster? That's rich. The dismissive comment revealed Brad's complete ignorance of agricultural aviation. A multi-billion-dollar industry requiring sophisticated aircraft and highly skilled pilots. But his prejudice prevented him from recognizing expertise that didn't match his visual expectations. Kelly checked her watch nervously. Weekend sales numbers were scrutinized by corporate, and this confrontation was consuming valuable selling time while creating a public relations nightmare. Sir, perhaps we could schedule an appointment for next week when you've had time to prepare proper documentation, she suggested, trying to end the embarrassing scene. I'm prepared today, Zeke replied. I have time now to discuss aircraft options for fleet expansion. Fleet expansion? Brad's laughter was loud enough to carry across the showroom. What fleet? Your imaginary crop-dusting empire? Maya's live stream audience had grown to 1,847 viewers, with aviation industry professionals beginning to recognize something significant about the customer being dismissed. But none of them knew what was coming next. The digital display shifted to 4:45 p.m. as regional sales manager Dave Sullivan's black BMW pulled into the executive parking space outside. His weekend inspection visits were unscheduled but routine, designed to ensure sales standards remained high during peak weekend traffic. 60 minutes to close. Weekend sales performance under corporate review, announced the overhead speaker, a reminder that monthly targets were being scrutinized by headquarters. Sullivan entered through the main doors, his 20-year aviation sales experience immediately detecting the tension crackling through his showroom. He approached the cluster of people surrounding his most expensive aircraft with the confidence of someone accustomed to managing difficult situations. What's the situation here? Sullivan asked, his voice carrying regional authority that made staff members straighten reflexively. Brad rushed to brief his superior, speaking urgently to justify the prolonged confrontation. Dave, we've got a potential time waster situation. Individual claiming pilot credentials and aircraft purchasing capability without proper qualification documentation. Sullivan nodded gravely, his expression shifting into crisis management mode. The presence of recording phones and Maya's continuing live stream should have triggered additional caution, but institutional assumptions proved stronger than situational awareness. Maya's Facebook Live had reached 2,400 viewers, with aviation professionals and civil rights advocates joining the stream. Comments poured in from licensed pilots who recognized Zeke's technical expertise despite the staff's dismissive treatment. "Sir, I'm Dave Sullivan, Regional Sales Manager," he announced to Zeke with practiced formality. "I understand there's been some confusion about our aircraft viewing procedures." "No confusion," Zeke replied, his tone remaining steady despite watching his credibility be systematically undermined. "I expressed interest in examining aircraft for potential purchase. Your staff assumed I couldn't afford them. Unfortunately, we see a lot of individuals who visit aircraft showrooms for entertainment rather than genuine purchasing intent," Sullivan explained, loud enough for the growing crowd to hear. "Our qualification procedures protect both customers and expensive inventory." Security Chief Tony Martinez arrived through the service entrance, his presence adding another layer of institutional pressure to what should have been a routine sales interaction. His radio crackled with updates from the control center monitoring via security cameras. "Chief Martinez, we may need assistance managing this situation," Sullivan announced, escalating the confrontation into potential security territory. Tony approached carefully, his 10 years in aviation security recognizing the complexity of customer disputes involving expensive aircraft. "What's the nature of the problem?" "Customer claims pilot credentials and purchasing capability without supporting documentation," Brad explained, his confidence bolstered by supervisory support. "Possible insurance investigation or competitor intelligence gathering." The accusations were becoming more elaborate and damaging. Maya's live stream captured the systematic character assassination of a customer whose only crime was not looking wealthy enough for luxury aviation sales. Dr. Patricia Williams, a successful surgeon browsing the Gulfstream section with her husband, approached the group with visible frustration. "Excuse me, but I've been listening to this gentleman's questions. He demonstrates more aviation knowledge than most pilots I know." "Ma'am, we appreciate your observation," Sullivan replied diplomatically, "but we have established procedures for high-value transactions that require proper verification." "What verification?" Dr. Williams challenged. "You didn't ask us for any documentation, and we've been here 90 minutes examining aircraft worth $15 million. The contrast was stark and undeniable. Wealthy-appearing customers browsed freely while Zeke faced interrogation for showing identical interest in less expensive aircraft. "Different circumstances require different approaches," Kelly interjected weakly, recognizing the logical inconsistency, but unable to abandon the discriminatory position. Maya's live stream hit 3,800 viewers. Aviation industry publications were beginning to monitor the stream, recognizing potential discrimination issues that could affect the broader industry's reputation. A group of young pilots training at the nearby flight school had gathered outside the showroom windows, drawn by social media posts about the confrontation. Their presence added external pressure to an already volatile situation. "Corporate monitoring shows elevated security concerns," Sullivan announced, checking his phone for updates from headquarters. "We need to resolve this situation quickly and professionally." Zeke pulled out his phone, scrolling past urgent notifications. "Fleet maintenance reminder, 6 p.m. Insurance inspection scheduled Monday. Agricultural aviation conference call, Tuesday, 8 a.m. The messages revealed extensive aviation involvement, but he chose not to display them. "Sir, we're going to need you to provide comprehensive documentation or conclude your visit," Sullivan announced formally. "Our security protocols require proper qualification for continued aircraft access." "I provided identification and expressed genuine purchasing interest," Zeke replied. "What additional documentation do you require?" "Financial statements, bank references, credit applications, proof of insurance capability," Brad listed eagerly. "Standard procedures for serious aircraft transactions." The requirements were deliberately burdensome, designed to eliminate rather than accommodate potential customers who didn't fit visual stereotypes. Tony Martinez stepped closer, his security training creating a subtle but unmistakable intimidation presence. "Sir, we need to cooperate with staff requests, or we'll have to ask you to leave the premises." The threat escalated beyond customer service into potential trespass territory. Maya's phone captured the exact moment when browsing became criminalized based solely on appearance and assumptions. "Timestamp 45 minutes to close," Maya whispered to her stream. "This has been going on for 40 minutes. Corporate should be watching this." The corporate was indeed watching. Vice President Lisa Park had been monitoring the security feeds from headquarters, recognizing the developing public relations disaster but hesitant to intervene in regional management decisions. A wealthy rancher from the turboprop section approached the confrontation, his weathered appearance contrasting sharply with his obvious affluence. "Son, I've been listening to your questions about King Air performance specifications. You sound like someone who's actually flown them professionally." "I have extensive experience with King Air operations," Zeke replied calmly. "What kind of operations?" Sullivan challenged, his skepticism obvious. "Agricultural applications primarily, crop protection, aerial surveying, livestock management support." Brad's laughter was sharp and dismissive. "Oh, right, the crop dusting fantasy again. Next you'll tell us you own an airline." The casual mockery revealed complete ignorance of agricultural aviation's complexity and economic importance. Multi-million-dollar operations requiring sophisticated aircraft and expert pilots were being dismissed as crop-dusting fantasy. Dr. Williams pulled out her phone, adding to the growing documentation. "This is discrimination, plain and simple. You're denying service based on appearance rather than qualification." "Ma'am, we're following established security protocols," Sullivan insisted, but his voice carried less conviction as the evidence mounted. Maya's live stream audience had grown to 5,600 viewers, with major aviation organizations beginning to take notice. The Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association was monitoring developments, recognizing potential industry-wide implications. "Corporate directive, 40 minutes to closing. All sales staff focus on qualified prospects," announced the overhead speaker, adding time pressure to an already explosive situation. Zeke stood surrounded by Sullivan, Brad, Kelly, and Tony. Institutional authority arrayed against a single customer whose qualifications had been prejudged and dismissed. The visual was captured by multiple phones, creating evidence that would soon reshape the aviation industry's approach to customer relations. But none of them suspected that the customer they were dismissing controlled one of the largest agricultural aviation operations in the region, with the economic power to influence their careers and the industry expertise to expose their ignorance. The countdown continued. 35 minutes to closing. 35 minutes before everything changed. 30 minutes to closing. All staff prepare end-of-day procedures. The announcement crackled through Elite Aviation's sound system as tension reached a breaking point in the showroom. Ezekiel Thompson slowly reached into his jacket pocket, his movements deliberate and controlled, despite the hostile circle of aviation professionals surrounding him. The crowd of onlookers, customers, staff, and Maya's growing live stream audience leaned forward, sensing a fundamental shift about to occur. Maya's Instagram Live had reached 7,200 viewers, with aviation industry insiders and civil rights advocates flooding the comments. Major aviation publications were now monitoring the stream, recognizing this incident's potential to reshape industry practices. Zeke withdrew a leather credential wallet, opening it to reveal official documentation that made the fluorescent lighting seem to dim around them. He extended the first card to Dave Sullivan with the measured precision of someone accustomed to command authority. Ezekiel Thompson, airline transport pilot license, multi-engine land, 8,400 flight hours, Sullivan read aloud, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper as the implications crashed through his consciousness. The ATP license represented the highest level of pilot certification, the same credentials required to captain commercial airliners. Brad's face went ashen as he realized he'd been mocking someone with more aviation expertise than anyone in the building. That's an ATP, Kelly stammered, recognizing the gold seal that distinguished professional aviators from recreational pilots. Those require thousands of flight hours and extensive testing. The elderly rancher who'd been supportive earlier stepped closer, his weathered face showing recognition. Son, I thought you knew those aircraft too well. ATP license means you're qualified to fly anything with wings. Zeke handed Sullivan a second card. Thompson Agricultural Aviation, Chief Executive Officer and Chief Pilot. The corporate letterhead was embossed with official aviation authority markings that made Sullivan's hands tremble slightly. Maya's live stream exploded. Viewer count jumped from 7,200 to 15,400 in 60 seconds. Comments flooded the screen. "Oh my God! He's a real pilot! They're all fired!" Aviation professionals worldwide were sharing the stream, recognizing the magnitude of what was unfolding. Thompson Agricultural Aviation, Sullivan repeated slowly, the name triggering recognition somewhere in his industry knowledge. I think I've heard that name. We're the largest agricultural aviation operation in 3 states, Zeke explained, his voice carrying new authority that made everyone step back instinctively. 47 aircraft in our current fleet valued at approximately $89 million. The numbers hit the assembled group like successive shockwaves. 47 aircraft meant Thompson Agricultural Aviation owned more planes than most commercial airlines. $89 million in assets made Zeke one of the wealthiest customers they'd ever encountered. Brad's mouth opened and closed without sound, his brain struggling to process that the crop duster he'd been mocking owned nearly twice as many aircraft as their entire dealership could display. Dr. Williams moved closer to the group, her vindication obvious. I told you he knew what he was talking about. You can't fake that level of technical knowledge. Tony Martinez backed away from the confrontation, understanding that he'd been positioned to intimidate one of the most successful aviation entrepreneurs in the region. His security training hadn't prepared him for this level of credential reversal. We specialize in precision agriculture applications, aerial surveying, and emergency response services, Zeke continued, consulting his phone to display Thompson Agricultural Aviation's website. Annual revenue approximately $47 million, with ongoing fleet expansion requirements. The website showed aerial photos of Thompson's operation, rows of pristine aircraft, state-of-the-art hangars, and sophisticated maintenance facilities that rivaled commercial airlines in scope and quality. Our current acquisition budget is $18 million for new aircraft purchases this fiscal year, Zeke announced, showing his phone's calculator app with the precise figure. We were recommended to Elite Aviation by Cessna's corporate sales division. Sullivan's face drained of all color as he realized the magnitude of lost business opportunity. $18 million represented more revenue than their dealership typically generated in 6 months of operations. A young pilot from the flight school outside had entered the showroom, drawn by the commotion. Mr. Thompson, is that really you? You spoke at our aviation safety seminar last month about agricultural flying techniques. The recognition from an independent source validated Zeke's credentials beyond any doubt. The pilot's excited expression showed genuine respect for someone he clearly considered an industry leader. The Federal Aviation Administration regulates our operations under Part 137 guidelines, Zeke explained, displaying official documentation on his phone. We maintain commercial pilot standards for all flight crew, with regular proficiency checks and medical certifications. Maya's phone captured every moment of institutional bias meeting professional reality. Her live stream audience had reached 18,600 viewers, with major news outlets beginning to embed the feed into their websites. Thompson Agricultural Aviation provides aerial application services for Fortune 500 agricultural clients, Zeke continued, showing client testimonials on his corporate website. John Deere, Cargill, and Archer Daniels Midland all contract our services for precision agriculture applications. The client list read like a Fortune 500 directory of America's largest agricultural corporations. Government contracts with the USDA and state agriculture departments appeared on the same page, demonstrating federal trust in Thompson's operations. Kelly Carter stepped forward hesitantly, her sales training warring with the magnitude of her misjudgment. "Mr. Thompson, we had no idea about your aviation background." "Ms. Carter, that's exactly the problem," Zeke replied calmly. "You made assumptions based on appearance rather than investigating qualifications." He opened another app displaying the Agricultural Aviation Association website, where his photo appeared on the board of directors page alongside other industry leaders. "I serve on the industry's primary trade organization, helping establish safety standards and operational protocols." The revelation that he held leadership positions in aviation industry governance made their treatment even more professionally damaging. Brad had been dismissing someone whose decisions influenced regulations affecting their entire business sector. "Our fleet includes King Air turboprops for executive transport, Cessna citations for client services, and specialized agricultural aircraft from Air Tractor and Thrush Aircraft," Zeke explained, listing aircraft types that demonstrated sophisticated operational requirements. He showed photos of his fleet on the company website. Pristine aircraft arranged in military-precise formations, each worth more than most people's homes. The visual impact was staggering for staff who'd assumed he couldn't afford a single plane. Sullivan fumbled for his radio, understanding that he needed to alert corporate headquarters immediately. "Control Center, we need Executive Vice President Park on site immediately. Priority situation." "The incident you've been monitoring for 45 minutes involves the CEO of Thompson Agricultural Aviation," Sullivan explained into his radio, his voice cracking with the weight of corporate disaster. Maya's livestream had become a real-time case study in discrimination meeting competence. Aviation schools were using the stream as teaching material about customer relations and professional respect. "Our aircraft maintenance budget alone exceeds $4.2 million annually," Zeke noted, consulting financial documents on his phone. "We employ 67 people across 3 states, including certified mechanics, pilots, and agricultural specialists." The employment numbers meant Thompson Agricultural Aviation was a significant regional employer, with economic influence extending far beyond aircraft purchases. Local politicians courted companies with that level of job creation impact. "Federal crop insurance requires certified aerial application for coverage eligibility," Zeke explained, educating the staff about industry realities they'd dismissed as fantasy. "Our services protect billions of dollars in agricultural assets annually." A group of wealthy customers had gathered to witness the confrontation's resolution, their phones recording what was becoming legendary in aviation circles. The visual of prejudice meeting expertise would be shared for years. "We're currently evaluating 3 Cessna citations for executive fleet expansion," Zeke announced, pointing toward the aircraft he'd originally been examining. "Today's visit was preliminary assessment for an $8.4 million acquisition." The specific dollar amount represented more than Elite Aviation's typical annual sales volume. Brad's discrimination had potentially cost the dealership its largest transaction in company history. Thompson Agricultural Aviation has been featured in Flying Magazine, Agricultural Aviation Magazine, and Professional Pilot, Zeke noted, showing publication covers featuring his aircraft and operations. "We are recognized industry leaders in precision agriculture technology." The media recognition meant his reputation extended throughout aviation circles, making Elite Aviation's discrimination visible to the entire industry community. "Our safety record includes 0 accidents in over 40,000 flight hours of agricultural operations," Zeke added, displaying Federal Aviation Administration safety statistics. "We maintain insurance coverage through Global Aerospace, with premiums reflecting our excellent operational history." The safety credentials were gold standard in aviation. Insurance companies didn't provide coverage for poor operators, and 40,000 hours without accidents demonstrated exceptional professional competence. Corporate Vice President Lisa Park burst through the main entrance, her emergency drive from headquarters evident in her disheveled appearance. She'd been monitoring the security feeds and social media explosion, recognizing catastrophic damage control requirements. "Mr. Thompson," Park began immediately, bypassing all subordinates, "I want to personally apologize for this unprecedented failure of customer service." "Ms. Park, this wasn't customer service failure," Zeke replied, his authority now undeniable to everyone present. "This was systematic discrimination based on visual prejudice rather than professional qualification." Maya's livestream audience had reached 24,000 viewers, with international aviation organizations monitoring developments. The contrast between Zeke's actual credentials and his treatment was becoming a viral case study in institutional bias. Customers throughout the showroom began applauding spontaneously, recognizing extraordinary qualifications that had been systematically dismissed. The sound built from scattered claps to thunderous ovation as witnesses celebrated competence over prejudice. "Ladies and gentlemen," Zeke announced to the crowd and cameras, "this concludes an unfortunate demonstration of how assumptions can blind institutions to opportunity." Brad Whitman, Dave Sullivan, and Kelly Carter stood frozen like exhibits in an aviation museum. Discrimination in the digital age. Their careers in aircraft sales were effectively over, but the broader implications were just beginning. The quiet revelation had been live-streamed to tens of thousands, creating evidence that would reshape aviation industry approaches to customer relations and professional respect. Corporate Vice President Lisa Park stepped into the showroom like a crisis management specialist entering a disaster zone. Her emergency drive from headquarters had given her time to calculate the magnitude of what social media was calling the most expensive discrimination incident in aviation history. "Mr. Thompson," she began, her voice carefully controlled despite the chaos surrounding them, "I want to personally address this catastrophic failure of our customer service standards." Zeke remained positioned near the citation, his credentials now spread across the aircraft's wing like evidence in a corporate trial. His phone displayed Thompson Agricultural Aviation's website, where photos of 47 aircraft created a visual argument more powerful than any legal brief. "Ms. Park, catastrophic failures require comprehensive solutions," Zeke replied, his tone carrying the quiet authority of someone who'd built a multi-million-dollar aviation empire from scratch. "Let's discuss the systemic issues that enabled today's discrimination." He lifted his tablet, displaying real-time financial data that made Park's face tighten with recognition. "Thompson Agricultural Aviation operates with an annual budget of $47 million. Our aircraft acquisition fund currently holds $18 million for fleet expansion." Maya's live stream had reached 31,000 viewers, with major aviation industry publications providing live coverage of the unprecedented corporate accountability moment. Comments poured in from pilots, aircraft manufacturers, and aviation business leaders worldwide. "Our comprehensive market analysis shows troubling patterns in luxury aviation sales," Zeke continued, consulting documents that Park recognized as sophisticated industry research. "Customer treatment varies dramatically based on demographic assumptions rather than financial qualification." He handed her a detailed breakdown that made her hands tremble slightly. Elite Aviation's current sales approach eliminates qualified prospects based on visual profiling, resulting in documented revenue losses across multiple market segments. Dave Sullivan stood nearby, understanding that his 15-year career was collapsing in real time. Brad Whitman clutched his employee badge like a life preserver, but everyone could see he was drowning in the consequences of institutional bias. "The aviation industry operates on reputation and referral networks," Zeke explained, opening another app showing industry association membership directories. "Today's discrimination affects Thompson Agricultural Aviation's influence across agricultural aviation, corporate flight departments, and aircraft manufacturing relationships." Park pulled out her own tablet, frantically consulting crisis management protocols that seemed inadequate for this level of institutional failure. "Mr. Thompson, what immediate actions would demonstrate Elite Aviation's commitment to addressing these violations?" "Accountability starts with leadership," Zeke replied, gesturing toward the staff members who'd orchestrated 50 minutes of systematic discrimination. Mr. Sullivan enabled discriminatory practices through poor supervisory oversight. Mr. Whitman violated basic customer service standards through obvious bias. He consulted legal documents displayed on his phone that made Park's corporate law background recognize serious liability exposure. Ms. Carter participated in customer profiling that violates federal civil rights protections in commercial transactions. Tony Martinez approached carefully, his security position making him uniquely aware of the situation's complete reversal. Mr. Thompson, I want to apologize for my role in this incident. I should have recognized the inappropriate treatment. Chief Martinez, you were responding to management directives rather than creating discriminatory policies, Zeke replied. Your professionalism during this incident will be noted in our industry association communications. The distinction between following orders and creating bias was important for aviation security professionals watching the live stream. Martinez's conduct would become a case study in appropriate response to management discrimination. Federal Aviation Administration diversity initiatives require commercial aviation businesses to demonstrate inclusive practices, Zeke continued, showing official FAA correspondence on his phone. Today's documented discrimination could trigger regulatory review of elite aviation's business practices. The federal implications terrified Park. FAA investigations could scrutinize every aspect of aircraft sales operations, potentially affecting their dealer certifications and manufacturer relationships. Our industry influence extends through the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, National Business Aviation Association, and Agricultural Aviation Association, Zeke explained, displaying board membership credentials. Tonight's incident will be discussed at upcoming industry conferences. The threat wasn't subtle. Aviation industry conferences attracted thousands of potential customers, and discrimination stories spread rapidly through professional networks that valued competence over prejudice. Thompson Agricultural Aviation maintains vendor relationships with Cessna, King Air, and Gulfstream manufacturers, Zeke noted, showing correspondence from aircraft companies. Today's treatment reflects poorly on elite aviation's dealer network standing. Maya's camera captured the moment when Park realized the scope of potential manufacturer relationship damage. Aircraft companies didn't tolerate dealers who discriminated against qualified customers. The luxury aviation market represents $4.8 billion annually, Zeke observed, consulting industry statistics. Discriminatory practices eliminate significant customer segments while creating legal liability exposure. He showed real-time social media analytics displaying #performance. #elite aviation discrimination had reached 180,000 mentions across platforms, with 91% negative sentiment toward the dealership. Our economic impact extends beyond aircraft purchases, Zeke continued, displaying Thompson Agricultural Aviation's vendor network. Annual spending on fuel, maintenance, insurance, and services exceeds $12 million regionally. The economic influence meant Thompson's business relationships affected multiple aviation service providers, who would hear about elite aviation's discriminatory treatment. Federal Equal Credit Opportunity Act protections extend to commercial aircraft financing, Zeke announced, pulling up legal statutes on his phone. Today's qualification bias violates federal anti-discrimination laws. Sullivan's phone was buzzing with calls from union representatives and legal advisors who'd seen the viral coverage. The legal exposure was mounting by the minute. News helicopters circled overhead, their cameras capturing aerial footage of the most documented aviation discrimination incident in industry history. The visual of corporate executives scrambling to contain damage from customer bias would become iconic. Elite Aviation's annual revenue depends heavily on repeat customers and referral business, Zeke observed, checking industry financial reports. Discrimination damages affect long-term customer relationship sustainability. Park consulted liability assessments on her tablet, calculating potential legal exposure that could devastate quarterly earnings and trigger manufacturer relationship reviews. Brad Whitman's discriminatory conduct represents pattern bias that likely affects other potential customers, Zeke noted, displaying recorded evidence from Maya's live stream. Federal civil rights violations require immediate corrective action. Brad finally found his voice, desperation cracking through his earlier arrogance. Mr. Thompson, I have a family and 20 years in aviation sales. I was just following security protocols. Show me the security protocol that authorizes discrimination based on customer appearance, Zeke challenged. Produce the training manual that instructs staff to assume financial inability based on clothing choices. The challenge hung unanswered because no such protocols existed in writing. Federal law prohibited exactly what Brad had been practicing for years. Kelly Carter's supervisory participation enabled systematic customer profiling, Zeke continued, consulting personnel records that demonstrated management failure. Her response escalated rather than corrected obvious bias. Maya's live stream had documented every moment of supervisory negligence, creating evidence that would be analyzed in discrimination training programs nationwide. Our timeline for comprehensive reform is non-negotiable, Zeke emphasized, consulting pre-prepared requirements that demonstrate extensive planning. Elite Aviation has 24 hours to present acceptable change proposals. He outlined demands with boardroom precision. Point 1. Immediate termination of employees involved in discriminatory conduct. Point 2. Comprehensive bias training for all customer-facing staff. Point 3. Customer service monitoring systems preventing future discrimination. Park's tablet showed the financial implications in real time. The reform costs were substantial, but the alternative, industry reputation destruction and legal liability, would be catastrophic. Point 4. Diverse hiring initiatives for sales and management positions, Zeke continued. Point 5. Partnership with aviation diversity organizations for ongoing discrimination prevention. The demands weren't punitive. They were corrective measures designed to prevent future incidents while demonstrating genuine commitment to inclusive customer service. Thompson Agricultural Aviation's industry relationships provide significant referral influence, Zeke observed, showing contact lists that included Fortune 500 aviation departments. Our response assessment determines future business recommendations. The referral threat was carefully calculated but devastating. Corporate flight departments relied on industry recommendations for aircraft purchases, and Thompson's influence could affect millions in potential sales. Ms. Park, this incident demonstrates that assumption-based customer service creates more problems than profit, Zeke concluded, his quiet authority more powerful than shouting or threats could ever be. The economic and reputation consequences would reshape Elite Aviation's approach to customer relations as they learned that competence came in many visual packages. Sullivan, Whitman, and Carter would never forget the day they discovered that discrimination carries a price tag measured in careers, industry standing, and professional reputation. 24 hours later, the Elite Aviation corporate conference room buzzed with urgent energy as emergency stakeholders gathered for damage control. CEO Janet Kim sat at the head of the mahogany table, reviewing overnight social media analytics that showed Thompson's live stream had reached 4.2 million views across all platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, Kim began, yesterday's discrimination incident has triggered immediate and comprehensive reforms to our customer service protocols. Maya's original Instagram Live had become the most watched aviation industry accountability video in social media history. The hashtag #ThompsonAviationReveal has sparked national conversations about assumption-based discrimination in luxury markets. Brad Whitman has been terminated effective immediately, Kim announced to the assembled regional managers. Our investigation revealed a pattern of customer profiling that violated both company policy and federal anti-discrimination laws. The termination had been processed through expedited procedures that bypassed normal employment protections. Federal civil rights violations created exceptions to standard grievance processes. Dave Sullivan faces immediate demotion and mandatory bias training before potential reinstatement, Kim continued, consulting disciplinary action reports. His supervisory negligence enabled systematic discrimination against qualified customers. Sullivan's 15-year management career had effectively ended, his regional authority stripped pending comprehensive diversity education and probationary review. Kelly Carter entered the conference room wearing a visitor's badge, her sales director position eliminated during overnight restructuring. I accept full responsibility for my participation in yesterday's customer profiling incident. Her public acknowledgement was being recorded for training materials that would be distributed throughout the aviation sales industry. Tony Martinez has been commended for professional conduct during an impossible situation, Kim noted. His security response will become the standard for de-escalation training across our dealership network. Martinez's integrity during the crisis had been recognized by aviation security organizations as exemplary performance under institutional pressure. The Thompson standards launch Monday across all elite aviation locations, Kim announced, unveiling the comprehensive reform package. Implementation includes 60 hours of mandatory diversity training for every customer-facing employee. The training program had been developed in partnership with the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and would become an industry model for bias prevention. Maya Rodriguez entered the conference room as the newly appointed Customer Experience Director, her citizen journalism skills making her invaluable for transparency initiatives. Her documentation had provided irrefutable evidence of systematic bias. Real-time customer interaction monitoring begins immediately, Maya announced, displaying the new accountability dashboard on conference room screens. AI-powered systems will flag potential discrimination patterns for immediate management review. The technology represented cutting-edge bias detection, developed by IBM's Watson team specifically for luxury retail environments. Dr. Samuel Johnson has accepted appointment as Independent Bias Prevention Ombudsman, Kim added. The former Department of Justice civil rights attorney would investigate discrimination complaints with authority to recommend terminations and policy modifications. His appointment sent shockwaves through aviation sales organizations nationwide, who recognized that accountability would now include federal-level oversight with real consequences. Federal Aviation Administration officials have commended our proactive response, Kim reported, consulting correspondents from Washington. The FAA is considering elite aviation's reforms as potential industry-wide standards. What could have been a regulatory nightmare had become a showcase for aviation industry accountability and proactive civil rights protection. Customer satisfaction scores have improved 18% since implementation began, Maya reported, displaying statistical data. Eliminating discriminatory practices actually increased sales efficiency across all demographic segments. The improvements weren't cosmetic. Removing bias from customer interactions increased both revenue and customer loyalty among previously underserved markets. Industry partnership initiatives begin next week, Kim announced, unveiling collaboration agreements with the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals and Women in Aviation International. Elite Aviation will sponsor diversity scholarships and aviation career development programs. The partnerships would address root causes of aviation industry homogeneity while demonstrating genuine commitment to inclusive excellence. 6 months from today, we'll conduct a comprehensive assessment of these reforms, Kim emphasized. Success means continued progress and industry leadership. Failure means additional accountability measures. The oversight mechanisms ensured that changes would be implemented genuinely rather than merely announced for public relations purposes. Federal officials were already citing elite aviation's response as proof that private industry accountability could drive faster change than government regulation alone. This incident demonstrates that documentation plus corporate accountability creates immediate systemic reform, Kim reflected during Aviation Week interviews. Private industry can respond to discrimination more quickly than federal agencies. The transformation had succeeded beyond expectations. Corporate leadership had converted institutional bias into competitive advantage within 48 hours. Other aviation dealerships were adopting elite aviation protocols voluntarily, recognizing that proactive reform prevented the career destruction and reputation damage they'd witnessed. Aviation sales exists to serve all qualified customers equally, Kim concluded her stakeholder address. Yesterday's failure became today's foundation for industry excellence. The revolution was complete. Discrimination had been replaced by accountability, bias with opportunity, and institutional prejudice with professional respect. Elite Aviation learned that serving all customers with dignity wasn't just morally imperative, it was financially essential for sustainable aviation business success. 1 year after the Elite Aviation incident, Ezekiel Thompson addressed the International Aviation Diversity Summit, representing a movement that had transformed aircraft sales protocols across 43 countries. Excellence recognizes no color barriers in aviation, he told delegates from 300-plus aviation companies worldwide. When we demanded accountability, we created standards that now protect pilots and aviation professionals globally. The numbers told an extraordinary story. Aviation discrimination complaints dropped 67% across dealerships implementing Thompson standards. Customer satisfaction improved 42% in companies adopting bias monitoring systems, while sales to previously excluded demographics increased 38%. Maya Rodriguez's documentary, Wings of Justice, When Bias Met Accountability, premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival, winning the People's Choice Award for Best Documentary Feature. Her citizen journalism had evolved into a platform exposing discrimination across luxury industries. One Instagram live stream changed everything, Maya reflected in Aviation Week interviews. It proves that ordinary employees can hold institutions accountable when they document injustice and demand professional integrity. The Thompson Aviation Diversity Fund had awarded $12.8 million in pilot training scholarships to underrepresented communities, graduating 847 new aviators who now serve airlines, corporate flight departments, and agricultural aviation operations nationwide. Tony Martinez became a nationally recognized expert on security protocols that protect, rather than profile, his conduct during the crisis inspiring similar integrity training across aviation security departments. Professional accountability speaks louder than policy manuals, Thompson observed during Harvard Business School lectures. When discrimination affects careers and industry standing, institutions evolve rapidly toward excellence. And Federal Aviation Administration officials adopted Thompson standards as recommended guidelines for all aircraft dealers and aviation service providers. The Department of Transportation cited Elite Aviation's transformation as proof that industry accountability could prevent federal intervention. These real-life stories demonstrate that professional credentials can overcome institutional bias more effectively than legal action. Thompson's measured response created touching stories of transformation that continue inspiring reform across aviation and luxury sales. Black stories like this remind us that expertise meeting authority can reshape entire industries. Life stories of dignity defended through professional excellence prove that competence speaks every language that matters. Brad Whitman eventually completed comprehensive bias training and now works for a regional aircraft maintenance company, where he shares his experience as a cautionary tale about assumption-based customer service in aviation sales. The ripple effects continue expanding. Every time aviation professionals treat customers with equal respect regardless of appearance, the elite aviation legacy lives on. Every sales representative who chooses competence assessment over visual profiling honors those who demanded change. Aviation industry leadership transformed how companies viewed customer discrimination. The Thompson model spread to marine sales, luxury automotive, and high-end retail sectors, with executives adopting accountability strategies to drive institutional reform across premium markets. Real stories have real power, Thompson concluded his summit address. When we document bias and use professional authority strategically, we create the inclusive industries our diverse talent pool deserves. If you've experienced discrimination in aviation, automotive sales, or luxury retail environments, share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters. Your experience demands accountability. These touching stories of quiet expertise overcoming systemic bias need amplification. Subscribe to Black Voices Uncut for more accounts of professional leaders confronting institutional discrimination. Together, we document injustice and build industries where qualifications matter more than assumptions.